You won't believe what happened when the HOA decided to send a group of goons to kick my family out of our own home. It started like any other day, but quickly turned into a nightmare that no one saw coming. The HOA had gotten some ridiculous idea that we were violating their rules, and instead of giving us a chance to fix things, they decided to take matters into their own hands. They sent a team of aggressive enforcers to evict us, and they thought it would be easy. But they didn't know who they were messing with. You see, my wife isn't just any ordinary person. She's a Navy commander, trained to stay calm and assertive in the face of chaos. As soon as she stepped outside to face these so-called enforcers, everything changed. They didn't expect the strength and resolve she carries from years of military service. What happened next left them speechless, and it was a moment none of them will ever forget. But what happened after that? How did she turn the tables on these goons so quickly? Stay tuned to find out. It's a story you won't want to miss. It all started a few weeks before the eviction notice arrived. We had been living in this neighborhood for years, paying our dues, following the rules, and never causing a fuss. But then, out of nowhere, the HOA started sending us strange letters. First, it was about a fence we put up in our backyard that they claimed violated some obscure regulation. Then, there were complaints about our front yard, even though we kept it well maintained. The next thing we knew, we were hit with the eviction notice. I couldn't believe it. The HOA didn't even give us a chance to explain. They didn't care about our side of the story, just a list of demands and threats. I knew we had to fight this, but at that moment, it felt like we were completely powerless. That's when I turned to my wife. As a Navy commander, she's no stranger to intense situations, but even this felt a little different. The thought of losing our home was terrifying, but she didn't flinch. Without hesitation, she started preparing for battle. She reached out to legal teams, gathered evidence, and began reviewing the HOA's own bylaws with a meticulous eye. But none of that prepared us for what was coming next. The HOA wasn't just going to send a few letters, they were going to show up at our door, and they weren't looking for a peaceful resolution. The morning they showed up, it was like something out of a bad movie. I woke up early, just like any other day, and glanced out the window to see a few unfamiliar cars parked near our house. At first, I thought maybe they were workers or contractors doing some job nearby. But then I saw them. A group of men, dressed in plain clothes, standing on our front lawn, talking in hushed voices. They didn't look like they were here for any friendly reason. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The last thing I wanted was for things to escalate, but I knew they weren't just here to talk. My heart was racing as I watched them approach the door. Before I could even say anything, my wife stepped into the room. She was calm, collected, her military training kicking in. But I could see the fire behind her eyes, the determination to protect her family, no matter what. As she walked outside to confront them, I could hear the murmur of their voices growing louder, one of them demanding we pack up and leave immediately. I could tell this wasn't just about the fence or the yard anymore, it was personal. The HOA had crossed a line. They had assumed they could intimidate us, get us to back down without a fight. But my wife wasn't going to let that happen. She walked up to the group, her posture straight, her voice even. "You need to leave now," she said firmly. There was no hesitation in her words, no fear, just pure, unshakable confidence. I could see the confusion on their faces. They didn't expect this kind of resistance. As the tension built between them, one of the goons started pushing back, trying to argue. It was clear they underestimated who they were dealing with. And that's when my wife made her move. The air was thick with tension as my wife stood face to face with the group of men. The leader of the pack, a tall guy with a smug expression, took a step forward. He looked her up and down, clearly sizing her up. "You think you can just ignore the rules, huh?" he sneered. "Well, we're here to make sure you follow them, or else." I could feel my pulse quicken. These guys weren't just there to enforce rules. They were there to break us. The more I watched, the more I realized they were enjoying this, thinking they had the upper hand. They didn't know who they were dealing with. My wife didn't flinch. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate step closer, her eyes never leaving the leaders. "I don't think you understand," she said, her voice low but firm. "You're trespassing on my property, and I'm giving you one chance to leave before things get ugly." The men exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't used to being challenged. One of them muttered something about calling the police, but my wife cut him off before he could finish. "Go ahead," she said, "call them. But you'll be explaining why you showed up at my home with no legal right to do so." I could see the shift in their demeanor, the cockiness starting to fade. They were beginning to realize they were in over their heads. But the leader wasn't done yet. With a look of defiance, he signaled to one of the others to step forward, and that's when things took a dangerous turn. The man reached for something in his jacket pocket, and I held my breath, praying it wasn't what I feared. As the man reached into his jacket pocket, my heart dropped. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't going to end well. I could feel the air crackle with tension, the world slowing down as I watched him fumble with whatever was inside. My mind raced. Was it a weapon? Did they come here intending to escalate this? But just as I braced myself for whatever was coming, there was a sudden shift. From behind the group of men, a loud, sharp voice rang out. "Step away from her." The voice was calm, but it carried a commanding authority that instantly made the men freeze. A new figure had appeared on the scene, a tall woman in military uniform, moving with purpose. She was walking towards us with a kind of confidence that could only come from someone who had been in high-stress situations before. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was one of my wife's old colleagues from her Navy days, someone I hadn't seen in years. What was she doing here? The goons exchanged confused looks, unsure whether to react or run. The newcomer walked up to my wife, offering a brief nod of recognition before turning her attention to the group of men. "You have no right to be here," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. "You better hope you didn't just make a huge mistake." The leader of the group tried to assert himself, but his words faltered. The sight of another military professional, one who clearly had the same authority and skill set as my wife, had him second-guessing every move he made. And that's when I realized something. This was no coincidence. Something much bigger was going on here than we could have ever imagined. The tension in the air was thick as the new arrivals stood beside my wife, their shared military presence undeniable. The goons had no idea how to handle it. For a brief moment, they hesitated, uncertain whether to back down or continue pushing. The leader, trying to maintain some form of control, stepped forward. "This is none of your business," he snapped at the newcomer, clearly unnerved by her sudden appearance. But before he could say another word, my wife stepped forward, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "It is our business," she said, her tone cold and calculated. "You've crossed a line, and you will be held accountable." The woman in uniform turned toward the group, pulling out a small, official-looking badge. The goons' faces turned pale as they recognized the insignia. "I'm with the Department of Defense. You're all under investigation for harassment and illegal activities related to this HOA eviction scheme." The leader's face drained of color, his bravado slipping away. He took a step back, eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. But it was too late. We'd been prepared, and it turned out that the HOA wasn't just overstepping its bounds. They were involved in something much more sinister. The eviction was part of a larger illegal operation to intimidate homeowners and force them out under false pretenses, all for profit. As the police arrived, things seemed to be settling. The goons were arrested, their plans unraveled. But just when I thought everything was resolved, I got a call. The voice on the other end was familiar but unexpected. It was from someone within the HOA, someone higher up than I ever imagined. "This isn't over," they said coldly. "You've only just begun to see the truth." My blood ran cold as I realized this wasn't just about a simple eviction. This was a much bigger conspiracy, one that was far from finished. And now, we were in the middle of it. As the dust settled and the police began their investigation, it felt like the weight of the world was finally lifting. The goons were arrested, and the Department of Defense launched a full-scale probe into the HOA's shady dealings. My wife and her colleague played pivotal roles in exposing the corruption, and we were finally free from the fear of losing our home. But even as we breathed a sigh of relief,